YouTube Ozeko, the Goat House is back on Overreaction Monday, and we're actually going to call this series right here, this brand new series, Overreaction Monday. And just after most of the games of Week 1 here, before the Monday night games, it's the prime time. This is the prime Overreaction Monday here. Everyone thinks they know the rest of the season based on what happened on Thursday and on Sunday. So we're going to take a look at some of these statements that might be floating around the NFL world, and we're going to decide if they're overreactions, if they're fair, if they're facts, or if they're overlooked statements, actually. So I had you guys kind of try to play along here on Twitter, and a few of you sent in some that I really liked. Everyone's were pretty good, obviously, but there was a few that really stood out to me. And so after those ones, I have a few of my own that I think is, some statements floating around there in the NFL world we'll take a look at. We got full coverage for the NFL in season, weekly predicts for every single game all year, score predictions on every single game all year, updated power rankings every single week, and plenty more, always adding new videos like this. So hopefully you can join in, subscribe, trying to reach that 60K subscriber goal here soon. Follow that Twitter, a lot of NFL talk on there during live games. All my initial thoughts, everything that's happening is on that Twitter. It's a must follow in my opinion. We have an Instagram, a podcast. That podcast is going to be a lot of fun in season. We got a lot planned with the other guys there. Patreon, there's a link in the description for everything that you may need there, including that Twitter, that Patreon. Take a look at this Patreon. You get junior score predictions every single week for every game. You get my locks every week, so maybe spread picks, over-unders, and plenty more. My college football score predictions for top 25 games, updated playoff predictions. Those will start happening every single week. A few weeks down the road here, it's a little too early, but and then extra content, Discord access, plenty more. Would appreciate if anybody can check it out there, but let's take a look at some of these sent in by Twitter. This is exactly what I was looking for. David Hall set one that has to do with the Packers here based on what just happened in Week 1. And we can do this video here every week. Expect it definitely to happen every week here early in the season. Probably won't be too many overreactions mid to late. This is exactly what I was looking for here, though. David Hall, the Packers never needed to address the receiver position, and their receiver room is good enough as is. Now, he's not necessarily saying this. He's saying this could be a statement that is either overreaction, overlooked, maybe fact, fair. This is exactly what I was looking for because the Packers played lights out, especially that offense. That looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers offense right there, and the receivers were all clicking. I kind of know. I mean, you noticed throughout the game, but then I actually went back and looked at some fantasy points for guys that were free agents, and I mean, there's a low. I mean, the Packers receivers. I mean, Lazard went off, Valdez-Scantling. I mean, these guys got a ton of points. So that's kind of when it really stood out. But yeah, this is a good one. But because I think a lot of people are kind of feeling okay with the receiver room, as they should after a game like that. But I would say this is actually an overreaction here. I think Davante Adams is still easily their best receiver, and it was surprising how the Vikings only had like one corner on him, but then if you do notice, Valdez-Scantling, even though he had kind of a big game, had some crucial drops. The Packers could potentially even score more points. The pressure really wasn't a factor for the Vikings, so there was times where it felt like people could have been open more, but Davante Adams really, I feel like carried this group still, even though the stats might say otherwise. But to me, this is an overreaction because, it's just one game. Vikings had a bunch of rookie corners, couldn't really get pass rush. Aaron Rodgers was lights out no matter who he was going against, no matter who the receivers were. I think, I definitely think it's needed still. Do I think they can win like a lot of games and go far with this group? Of course, but it won't really be because of this group. Maybe Davante Adams, but maybe not because of this group. I think if this team had a legit number one receiver with Davante Adams, because I think today's NFL you need at least two number ones. That's how I think, especially with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. I think this team would be that much more of a contender, really. I think that much more. So I'll say that's an overreaction if you think that the Packers receiver, if you're saying, oh, I guess that's why they didn't really go for a receiver. They could really believe in that group, and remember they're supposed to have Devin Funchess as well. But yeah, I definitely think it's still somewhat of a weak spot, even though they played very well. I think another receiver would make them that much better of a contender. So It's exactly what I was looking for with some of these overreaction statements. This is a really good one here from Eric Morton, having to do with the Dallas Cowboys after Sunday night's loss to the Rams. He says Mike McCarthy is just as bad of a decision maker in crunch time as Jason Garrett. So that seems to be the hot topic there after the Cowboys game, was McCarthy's questionable play calling, which after the game he kind of said that analytics played a big part of that. Which is a whole other different conversation, I suppose. But again, I think it's a pretty simple one here. I think it's an overreaction. I think only 1 week, and it's the first time he stepped foot in there and coached with the Cowboys, with these players as well. So I think it's a bit of an overreaction. You could be a little concerned in the back of your mind, maybe. I think questionable play calls. This game could have potentially went to overtime. I think things would have played out a little different if they would have kicked the field goal and made it. And people question really not so much going for it, but maybe that play decision, but looking at third down, running the ball as well. So not really a good first game for Mike McCarthy, and it felt a little Jason Garrett-ish there. But I think it's definitely an overreaction to say he's just as bad as Jason Garrett. Cowboys fans, might be thinking it's just as bad just because that's what they expected. Maybe they're so used to it. But I definitely say it's an overreaction. I am a little worried about trusting analytics that much. McCarthy, unless he's just blaming it on that for now, because McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. He's got the experience. It's highly questionable to kind of go against your own judgment. I don't think that's really the case. I think he kind of was feeling it as well, not kicking the field goal. Ultimately, it's his decision. But I got confidence as the year goes on. I kind of talked about it. If you look at my power rankings for week 1, the Cowboys didn't start off as high as I kind of had them finish in the year, and there's a reason for that. So I expected them to beat the Rams, so it's obviously not great, but it's nothing to get alarmed about, extremely concerned, no reason to panic. So I'd say it would be an overreaction if you think Mike McCarthy is just as bad as Jason Garrett there in crunch time. Another one, this one has to do with the Colts from Broncos 2020. It's a very good one as well. It's definitely one I was thinking about using for the Colts. Something that has to do with Phillip Rivers there, but he says Phillip Rivers having a great O-line will not hide the overall amount of turnovers he commits. This is another good one because we've seen Phillip Rivers go from a poor offense line with the Chargers to a good offense line with the Colts. A little different weapons, perhaps. We've seen him start this week 1 game off against the Jags very strong, and then it kind of went, it really went down. He started turning the ball over. So Phillip Rivers having a great O-line will not hide the amount of turnover. It's a good one. I think, trying to think what to do with this one. I agree with it. I agree with it. I think I'm actually going to say it's overlooked. This is overlooked. I think most people may say, it depends on who you're talking to, but I think most people will say it's just week 1. It doesn't really matter. And it could be true. Things are weird in week 1, but I don't know if this is really a weird thing. When weird things happen in week 1 that we're not expecting, I think that's when you pull up the card where it's just week 1. But Phillip Rivers did the same exact thing for the Chargers last year. Had good numbers, high numbers. They're in games, they're winning games, and they kind of blow it with the turnover. So it really wasn't anything new. So I don't know if you really could blame it on week 1. So the turnovers will definitely be a thing despite changing location, changing teams, changing offensive lines. The turnovers will still be a problem. I'm not going to say he's going to throw as many interceptions. That's really not what I'm getting at. But I agree here that the O-line won't cover up those interceptions. They won't eliminate the interceptions, and I think people are kind of overlooking that actually a bit. So definitely not an overreaction here. That's a pretty good one there. Moving on to the next one. Jimmy G is not the answer. Yeah, I wanted to talk about, for the Niners. I did one for majority of teams. I didn't do one for every team here or gather one from every team. I didn't want to force anything, but if I were to, because I did have to make some for a bunch of teams here myself, and I did with the Niners, I did want to talk about Jimmy G. So somebody, Johnny Texera here, Jimmy G is not the answer. I would have put This is an overreaction. This is an overreaction. Because I guess to find the answer to win the Super, to get back to the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl. But when I think not the answer means they need to replace him now or after this year, I'm gonna say it's definitely an overreaction. What I kind of want, because I want to talk about Jimmy G too, but he brought it up, so I wanted to give him a shout out here. But I kind of want to say, is Jimmy G holding the Niners back? And I think that would be a really good one because this team is loaded. The rest of the team played well enough, considering that they were healthy, or if that they're injured. Actually, the rest of the team played well enough to win that game, no question. I think Jimmy G kind of let them down. So, is he holding the team back? I think would be a good one. I'd say in that game, yes, but I'd say kind of going forward here, I think that'd be a little bit of an overreaction as well. But that's kind of the talking point of that Niners game was Jimmy G holding them back? Kind of a poor game for him, unfortunately. Moving on to the next one though, the Chiefs. I was going to bring up Clyde EdwardsHelaire too. So happy Thunder fan, hype Chiefs fan, okay Royals fan. Mentions Clyde EdwardsHelaire is a top 7 running back in the league. Maybe a little specific here. Would like it more. I like the simple ones. Some of the first few. It's a good one, but the first few we did were kind of simple. Top 7, and I'd say I'm as big of a Clyde EdwardsHelaire supporter as anyone. I think this guy's an absolute beast. Was he the only running back to go over 100 yards in week 1? Definitely can be a top 10 running back. Definitely can be a top 7 running back for sure, especially with the fit, with the team he's on. But I'd say it's an overreaction right now. You probably can, in no order, you probably can rattle off anybody. I'm not going to sit here and do it, but you probably can sit there and rattle off running backs that you're confident are better than Clyde EdwardsHelaire right now, with 1 week played. So I'd say it's an overreaction, but he can be. It can happen. But right now, saying that right now, I think is a bit of an overreaction here. In the Lions, when I was going to come up with one of the Lions, I definitely wanted to bring up Matt Patricia. So Greg Hallberg here, he's a Lions fan himself. He thinks they go 0-4. So we're getting a little specific here. But, I like to keep it simple. But interesting that he brought that up. He thinks they go 0-4, and we'll get back to why 0-4. And Matt Patricia is packing his bags come bye week. And it's interesting that he brought that up because you go take a look at the schedule of the Lions. They're at Green Bay. They just lost to the Bears, but they're at Green Bay, at Arizona, and then home against the Saints. Tough road. Their opportunity to start the year off hot, and they kind of blew that there. Matt Patricia, the main one responsible, maybe with Bevel right there with them. So, this is interesting. And I think if it was a normal year, Patricia should be fired today. He should be fired today after that one, because I think the Lions outplayed the talent. The players outplayed the Bears, but they end up losing and blowing the 23-6 comeback there in just the fourth quarter with 21 unanswered points for the Chicago Bears and a lot of mistakes there, mainly from the coaching staff getting conservative. But I think. I think this is fair. I think this is fair. It's tough to replace a coach. What's going on. The lack of preparation here, and I guess the responsibility here. But they're not going to go out and look for a new coach. It'll probably be an interim coach. The next obstacle is who will it be? I wouldn't give it to Bevel, so that might be a reason not to do it, or that'd be a bad reason to do it. But if they start 0-4 and they're going to be looking back at this week 1 game and they're going to make it look, they're going to think, which it's logical to think that kind of set them up, actually, I should say, to go on that streak on the wrong way of, a bad streak, a losing streak there. So, I think it's a fair statement. I'm not saying they're going to fire him. I'm not saying they're not going to fire him. I think it's a fair statement. I think it's very possible, and it's actually possible. They actually can go 0-4. It's a tough schedule, and do they lose momentum? Do they lose energy? I don't think they do, because it's only 1 game. Most of these guys have been in the league for some time, but that could be an energy, momentum killer there, blowing that comeback, and the players probably feeling like they, for the most part, did everything they can there to win that game. So I think it's pretty fair. Looking at the next one, and for the Jets, I was planning on mentioning something about Adam Gase. So Keels B98 brings up Adam Gase is fired by Thanksgiving. Little specific there, but I actually think I actually think this is it's a tough one because you can look at this multiple ways. I'm gonna put overreaction, and the reason I'm gonna put the reason I'm gonna put overreaction is because I just don't think they fire him. Really, I don't think they're really considering it. Even Thanksgiving's not that close. I don't even that far down. I don't think they're really considering it. That's why it's a tough one because it's not a bad statement. I think he should have never got the job in the first place. But it's a guy that if they continue to struggle to play like that, he definitely should be fired. But I guess it's the point of view you look at it. So if you look at it like a fan like myself, that's really not an overreaction, but I really don't think it happens. So I kind of looking at the Jets' perspective there. They're definitely going to be calm. They're definitely going to be optimistic going forward. When they hired Gase, they made it seem like it almost feels like they came out and kind of said it too, that in a way that they're gonna let this process, they're gonna take their time. They're gonna be patient. They're gonna be patient with this because Sam Darnold's kind of a raw prospect even at the time. Even now it kind of feels like it. He's got a lot of upside, but he's really not there yet. You need time. You don't want to kill the quarterback's confidence. So that logic, alone makes it seem like they're going to let Gase go for the long haul here, give it a shot. Then again, the front office has changed since then. So this new front office could be different, could have different thoughts. But then again, it was more of the ownership that felt that way, I thought. I felt like that. And it felt like as soon as the front office was out, it felt like Gase got control. Almost felt like Gase went hunting for the front office. It just feels like it's Gase's team still. So from a fan's perspective, it definitely should happen. It shouldn't be an overreaction, but I kind of took it as, I'm looking at it towards, I really don't think it's going to happen. I wouldn't say 0% chance, but I just really don't think it's going to happen there for the Jets and Adam Gase there. But only 1 week, but a rough one. So now for many other teams here, I came up with some good ones here that I think is kind of floating around where people are thinking. A lot of people are saying the Texans offense line is the same as it has been for quite some time, just pretty bad still, and it played bad in week 1. But I'm actually going to say overreaction. And another tough one I gave myself too, because it actually could be pretty close to the same as we're talking. Like I said, week 1. But I'm kind of looking when people overreact and make these statements, from week 1, they're kind of predicting. And that's where I think everyone makes a mistake. They're kind of predicting for the future. And I think most people think the Texans offensive line is going to be pretty bad this whole year. It's going to be a problem going forward, and they'll have their moments. They'll struggle, but I think this offensive line is actually improving. I do think it's improving. I think it'll get better every step of the way. Again, it'll have its moments where it struggles, but I think it will get better. It's not going to be the same offensive line that we know, that we remember, that we want to forget for the majority of the season. It's not going to be that offensive line. So I'd say it's an overreaction. I could have thrown something about DeAndre Hopkins up there, but I'm kind of sick of that. Everyone... and DeAndre Hopkins did have a big game, but I'm kind of everyone bashing the Texans for trading that. We'll have to wait and see on that, I suppose. But that's kind of getting worn out already. That topic. Next, the Vikings defense is far worse than 2019. You see, they gave a league high points against the Packers. The Packers were moving the ball like crazy on them. Rodgers really wasn't taking too much time to find somebody open. Sometimes these guys weren't really open. Rodgers making ridiculous plays. Very poor performance in week 1 from the Vikings. Yeah, that's obvious. Very poor performance. But I think it's an overreaction to say they're far worse, after just 1 week. I think people were ready to jump on this because they lost quite a few players. And, Trey Waynes actually feels like a pretty big loss. The other ones don't feel that major. I think missing Danielle Hunter is the most obviously impactful situation there, which he should be back after week 3. And I think that kind of plays a part too. They couldn't really get any pressure. Ngakoue only played about 50% snaps. He just got in there. Hunter's not there. And that'll make the job easier for the corners. The corners are young. It was their first week starting. So you would think they can get better. They can definitely be worse. I don't think they're going to be far worse, though. I think they'll be around the same area, honestly. They still have their impact players. If everyone gets healthy, stays healthy. Go back to last year. They started off pretty, this was pretty bad, but they started off a little slow. First half of the season, statistically, they were probably right in the middle of the NFL in defense, and they ended up number 6 defense at the end of the year. They really turned it up. So I think Zimmer, with his adjustments and getting these corners ready, getting Daniel Hunter back, getting Ngakoue ready, and keep in mind, Rodgers was, some of those throws he was making, the ways he was playing, it felt like, you don't know for sure, but it felt like those plays were happening no matter the defense out there. I guess if it was a ridiculous pass rush, that could have been the thing to change. But, I'm not super worried here. I don't think it's going to be way worse than 2019. I don't think they took that major step that some people think, step down, that some people think. We're going to have to wait and see. It was a pretty poor performance there, but I'd say it's an overreaction. Seahawks, Adams is a defensive player of the year candidate there. We saw how good he was all over the place in just week 1, so people are getting really hyped on him, and this could be something similar to a statement kind of getting thrown out there. And I actually, 2 options here for me. I'm gonna say fact. I definitely think he is. I don't think it's overlooked. I thought about that. I think it's a fact. I think people are pretty high on him. But yeah, it could be overlooked in a way because people are probably saying a pass rusher or even a corner is gonna win when Adams has a realistic shot to win. But I'm going to say fact because the amount he does for that defense already, just week 1, and just now, and it's not going to go away. It's going to continue to happen, but he's going to continue to play like that. He's going to continue to make that, that impact. And they passed up on getting some edge rushers. They're still a little weak at the edge rush position, but it didn't matter because a safety was the bigger addition and the right addition for the Seahawks because he's involved. He's not just safety. He's involved in every single category. We actually seen him get a couple tackles for loss, getting in the backfield. He makes other people better around him. He's in the quarterback's head. He's the guy you have to game plan for. And he's showing, he's actually, the production is showing up on the field. You see it. You see it happen. So I definitely think he's probably a strong defensive player candidate of the year candidate. So, yeah, definitely say it's a fact or in that range there after looking at him in week 1. The Bears, Trubisky was the right choice. Rough first half, I'd say rough 3 quarters for Mitchell Trubisky. It was definitely off target. And then the comeback in the 4th quarter, he was playing very well, hitting his throws, and all of a sudden on target. You could say maybe he was just warming up there, pretty brutal early on. But I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Trubisky was the right choice. I'm gonna say that's an overreaction. There is no doubt in my mind that Nick Foles is the better quarterback, especially in the Bears offense. And those struggles would not have happened early. They would not have had to dig themselves out of that much of a hole, maybe not a hole at all if Nick Foles was in there. So I think they're in that hole because of Trubisky. And I think they have a little bit of attachment there. They know that Trubisky might have more upside than Foles. Foles isn't the long-term answer, so that was the reason they went with him. I think because he played a good quarter and came back and won doesn't mean he was the right choice, and that was one game as well. So I'm going to say that's an overreaction if you're just already, for sure think that was the right choice. They have their reasons that you can't really argue with too much, disagree with too much on why they chose him. I kind of talked about, that if they don't play Trubisky and see what else he has, they know they're in trouble for the long-term future. So there's a chance, doesn't mean that if they play Trubisky, they're set for the long-term future, but there's some sort of chance there. But still to be determined. I think Bears fans were calling for Foles for the most part through even the 2nd quarter. So I think 1 quarter, you can't let that kind of get in your head there. But it was a heck of a 4th quarter, and it was a comeback there for the Bears. Fitzpatrick needs to be benched. Could be, after that performance, only scoring 11 points, 3 turnovers there for the Dolphins. And, pretty disappointing performance overall. And just after 1 game, you would think, calling for somebody to be benched. I don't know if too many people are. But this is kind of something that I think, maybe not Dolphins fans, actually outside of Dolphins fans, that could be kind of thought of, a statement they could be thinking of there, or even saying. But a thought of a quarterback being benched after week 1 usually would be an overreaction But I think in this case, I'm gonna say this is overlooked a bit. I think they strongly should consider. I think people say, well, Tua had the injury. They got a rough offensive line, so there's really no thinking. We shouldn't even think about it. And I think that's why it's overlooked. I definitely think it should be strongly considered. Fitzpatrick actually was only sacked one time against the Patriots, so the offensive line beating up Tua. He could get pressure in his face at times. Every quarterback will. But there just wasn't enough. This game was a winnable game. This was a winnable game, turning the ball over 3 times. Fitzpatrick isn't going to get you anywhere. Sitting Tua and then throwing him in when the season's over in a disastrous situation won't get you anywhere, and it'll hurt the future of your franchise piece. So I think it's almost put him in now before it's too late, or don't put him in at all. Rare that I would call for somebody to be benched after week 1, and I'm not saying he definitely needs to be benched, but I think it's something that's overlooked a little bit, and I wouldn't be against it. So, if they know more than us, the Dolphins, if for some reason he's not healthy, I feel like we would know. But if he's not 100%, then of course I'm not going to put him in. But I feel like we would know. It sounds like he's full go. So I don't know. It was a rough go for Fitzpatrick in week 1. You can't say that's going to happen every week because it only happened in week 1. That's not fair, but it's a winnable game. Pressure wasn't really a major issue. Just struggle, tough for him to go against a strong secondary, I suppose. Moving on to the next one here, to the Patriots. Actually, the Dolphins played Cam Newton Patriots, just as good as the Brady Patriots. Couldn't say that one. Love what I saw from Cam Newton. Love the little read option. Love him getting outside, running. Was a dominant runner in that game. You love to see it. Love to see him kind of back. Do we know if he's back for sure? That could have been one too. Is Cam Newton fully back? But I think people are kind of stuck on that the Brady was declining a little bit. This is a new look. Patriots could do wonders. Belichick and McDaniels are the real keys to success, and they're major keys to success. But I'm going to say this is an overreaction. I'm hyped about this Cam Newton Patriots team. I want to see more. Dolphins struggled a bit. We definitely need to see more. It's an overreaction at this point. It's definitely a different team, and that could cause some game plan issues for other teams. But I'd say it's an overreaction as of now. We'll see, though. It's definitely something fun to watch for this year is how that will unfold. Next, Eagles' offensive line is a major problem, and right off the bat, I'm gonna go overlooked here. I think people see that Lane Johnson was out. I think they also factor in that Brooks and Dillard were out. But remember, Brooks and Dillard will be out all year. Something else to remember is Jason Peters took the spot of Dillard. Now, Dillard is definitely the right man for the starting job. He's got the high potential, will be better than Peters. Or right this second, you could argue, make a good case, strong case that Peters is better right now. So where are they weaker this season, considering what's going on? Probably only where Brooks is missing. Well, definitely where Brooks is missing at that guard spot. But they were missing Lane Johnson. Well, that's kind of beside the point there because those guys are out they're out for the whole year. So Lane Johnson was the only guy missing, and that is a major, major loss. So I think people are thinking once he's back, that everything's solved. They're maybe not solved, but way better. And I think that's why it's overlooked. I think that there is major problems. The interior pressure is still a problem. That's a quicker trip to the quarterback, and that is what threw Carson Wentz off. Sometimes he was at fault on some of those interior pressure plays. There was a blitz, actually, where he was coming right at Wentz, and Wentz was just staring down somebody, somehow didn't see him. So I think the offensive line is actually a major problem. Even with Lane Johnson, it gets better with Lane Johnson, but it's still a major problem, and people might be just thinking, it'll be all right. We'll get Lane Johnson back. We're just going to be fine. We played Washington defensive line in week 1, which is one of the better ones in football, but it's concerning me big time. So I think it's a little bit of an overlooked issue there as of now at this way too early stage. Now to Washington. Washington has an elite defensive line. I'm going to say fact right off the bat, and it's not really because of just week 1. That plays a part. They got 8 sacks, a lot of pressure, but it's really not because of that. I'm not going to overreact. I'm not going to say that just because of week 1. I mean, just plain and simply, look at the talent there and tell me what you think of that defensive line, especially with the rotation they have. I mean, the amount of guys that can play on the defense line. I mean, Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen. I mean, you got Matt Ioannidis, Daron Payne. I mean, that is a rotation. That is a strong group. This is an elite defensive line, I think, this year. Will it be an elite defense? It definitely has a solid shot because of that defense line. It's probably the most important thing of a defense. But yeah, that D line alone, I think is elite. I think it's that good. Chase Young already playing at an extremely high level, and we really didn't need to see that game to kind of know that he would. So that's kind of the thing. You really don't have to base this one off of just 1 week. Luckily here, so I'm gonna say fact. Raiders offense is top tier. I love what I saw from the Raiders offense. I'm excited about the Raiders offense because what I saw, Derek Carr was smooth, accurate. Love what I saw from him. Josh Jacobs kind of getting going in the receiving game there. Love that. I mean, Ruggs looked pretty exciting early before he got hurt. That's great. We knew the offensive line was great. All positives. I will say, even though it looked like top tier based off 1 week, if you're kind of saying this going forward, I say it's a bit of an overreaction. They definitely can be. I'm excited. I'm confident because what I saw, but I do, and I think it can be. But I do think it's a little bit of an overreaction, mainly because it's one of those things. There's some things you can base off 1 week, and there's some things you really can't. And I think that's one of those things you can't because we've seen Derek Carr kind of play great and then kind of go downhill. But mainly, Panthers defense, specifically their secondary, look at their defense could be the worst in football. If we're talking their secondary, I'm pretty confident it's the worst in football. So that is something to slow your roll a little bit about. But I am excited. I'm happy about what I saw with that Raiders offense. Excited. Saints next week, Monday night, in that new Raiders stadium. I'm excited for that one. Next, Jags are a better team than we thought. Could have put something about Minshew in there. I think some people out there, maybe some Jags fans, are like thinking Minshew is. I mean, he had a great day. Not a whole bunch of yards, not a whole bunch of attempts, but was very accurate. He had a great day. I think people are maybe a little high, overreacting a little too much. He played the Colts, who could be a good team down the stretch. I don't know about right now. I think so. People could be overreacting on Minshew a little bit there, but I was very impressed, and that's going to kind of go into. I'm not going to say fact. I'm going to say fair for this. Jags are a better team than we thought. It's only 1 week. They played the Colts, a team that I kind of thought could struggle early, could pick it up late. So it's really not completely shocking that the Jags won. I did pick the Colts, but it's not completely shocking here. But I think it's fair that they could be a better team than we thought because the defense did step up at times. But I'm mainly going to talk about the offense. It's one of those offenses that it's a small ball, quick offense, but it only works. It's an easier offense to run for quarterbacks, but it only works with the right quarterback. So it could be one of those situations where people are saying, well, Minshew's in a great system, an easy system, and you kind of can argue that it's simplified for the quarterback. The throws he has to make, yes, but only special. Not super special, but only certain, I guess, rare amount of quarterbacks actually can work in that. He has to be able to kind of, move quick, dissect plays very quick, and read the defense, quickly, even though, sometimes it doesn't really have to be the case because it could be a one-read quarterback that kind of just gets lucky in the first guy's open. I don't really see that at Minshew. So he's definitely starting worthy. He's definitely impressive. I'd say don't overreact on him too much till we see more. Is he a guy that's going to win them something, deep? Is he going to go deep? That's kind of to be determined. But I think because of that, it's a sneaky offense because of that. I wish they had a better running game. The weapons off a receiver mainly better than people think. So I think the offense is a little better than people think. I think it's probably one of those annoying offenses that teams can like game plan for. All right, this is what they're going to do, and then it gets out there and happens. It happens so fast that it's just one of those annoying offenses, for the defenses to play. So I'd say they could be. It's fair. You can't really say fact. One game they played the Colts. It's definitely fair though. It's definitely fair to say. Because it could be a sneaky team for sure. And then we'll end this one off here. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady has declined. It's a little sloppy game. 2 interceptions, 1 pick six. It was pretty brutal. There's really nothing that tells me he's declined though. I'm gonna say overreaction. Yeah, I mean the elite Brady from years ago. I mean probably doesn't throw those interceptions, but there's nothing that supports him declining that much over a year or even 2 years. I think first time playing with this Buccaneers team, he's got to go to a tough place, play a tough team, a well-prepared team. They're all getting used to each other. We knew there would be sloppy moments early. If this continues to happen, this many interceptions, the pick sixes, then we can start to talk a bit, which it's possible. But I'd say it's an overreaction to say he's declined. Again, he's declined from some points, from the elite winning the Super Bowl every year days, definitely. But I think people act like he's almost completely washed up. It's definitely an overreaction based off one game. I am extremely high in the Buccaneers, and I picked them to lose that game. Nothing was surprising about that game whatsoever. So I don't want to say things are going to plan, but I think you get my point that it's nothing. It's definitely something that was almost expected in a way, and nothing to overreact about here. But it can be something that ends up being concerning, alarming down the road here. We got to wait and see for all of these, and we can bring this back up next Monday. Some of these we can revisit. Hopefully more of you guys get involved on Twitter. I know a lot of you sent some things in, but kind of going with the simple ones, getting right to things that based off just what happened, yesterday or Thursday. But yeah, pretty fun new series. So we're going to add more things. This is probably something that won't keep up through the entire year because really no overreactions for the most part mid to late season, but we're always adding new videos like that. As soon as we get the halfway point, we can start predicting playoffs again. We can get an MVP ranking / ladder going. So we're always adding more videos on top of our weekly predictions, our power rankings, our score predictions every single week, extra content. In the Patreon, we have our podcast as well. The Twitter is full of constant NFL talk, especially during games. So we got you covered here. Please like, subscribe, follow that Twitter, turn notifications on so you don't miss a thing. That's going to do it for this one, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.